I discovered a $9,800 loan in my name. The next night, the bank manager read the forged contract aloud at our family table. The first time I saw it, my stomach dropped like an elevator with its cable cut. I had only logged into my credit report out of habit, the kind of routine check people preach about but rarely follow. My plan had been to skim through, close the laptop, and move on with the night. Instead, my eyes locked onto a debt I had never touched, a $9,800 loan, tucked neatly under my name. At first, I thought it was a clerical slip. The world runs on paperwork errors and mismatched forms, right? That was the simple explanation I tried to convince myself of. But the details, the date the loan was issued, the listed address, the attached signature, all of it demanded my attention. My name sprawled across the bottom of the page, but it wasn't mine. Not the way I write it. My loops are sharp, deliberate. Every letter tied down like I'm afraid of losing them. This one was a weak imitation, tilted, unsure, as if someone had studied my writing in a hurry. And that's when my gut told me the truth. I didn't need time to analyze it. I didn't need to imagine a stranger behind the curtain pulling this trick. I knew exactly who had done it, but knowing didn't mean I confronted them. Not yet. A confrontation would turn into a shouting match, emotions spiraling until the facts drowned. I wanted something cleaner, something undeniable. So instead, I called the bank. I asked for Thomas Wright, the branch manager. He had known my grandfather back in the day, when trust wasn't something you signed for, it was something you carried. When I told him what I'd found, I heard the old steadiness in his voice, the kind that makes you believe someone's word is enough. He agreed to meet me the next evening. I didn't tell anyone. The house carried on as if nothing lurked in its walls, my parents talking about neighborhood gossip, my brother moving through rooms with his usual smug calm. Watching him then, I almost admired how composed he looked, how normal. But it was only a mask, and I decided I wasn't going to be the one to rip it off. I wanted everyone else to see it crumble without me lifting a hand. The next evening played out like any other. Dinner at the long oak table, plates laid out, conversation bouncing between my parents, my sister, and me. My brother sat across from me, fork tapping idly against his plate, bored by the sound of his own chewing. He was too at ease, too certain no one suspected him. The irony pressed against my ribs. I almost laughed. And then the front door opened. The sound carried through the house, casual at first, until a figure stepped inside. Conversation halted mid-sentence. Chairs shifted. My father looked up sharply. My mother's smile froze. Thomas Wright walked into the dining room holding a manila folder thick with paper. His presence was out of place in our home, his formal gray suit against the warmth of our setting. He didn't bother with small talk. He cleared his throat, his voice steady, but weighted with purpose. "We've reviewed the $9,800 loan taken in this household," he began, his gaze sweeping the table before stopping at me. The contract was signed under his name. He nodded toward me, but the handwriting analysis proved otherwise. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's fork clattered against porcelain. My sister blinked like she hadn't processed the words. Thomas opened the folder and pulled out the contract. He didn't pass it around. Instead, he read it aloud. Every line echoed in the room, the loan amount, the repayment terms, the signature. His voice didn't waver, but the words carried a weight that pressed down on all of us. The forged scrawl felt like a stranger's confession hanging in the air. When he finished, he set the paper flat on the table, the sound sharp against the wood. His eyes shifted from me to the person sitting 3 chairs down. "The person who signed this isn't the account holder," he said with deliberate clarity. "It's you." His finger pointed at my brother. The silence that followed was violent in its stillness. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as if to hold in disbelief. My father's expression hardened, disappointment mixing with a slow, dangerous anger. My sister stared at my brother, her face pale, like she'd just learned the floor beneath us was cracking. And my brother, his skin drained of color, the confident smirk gone. His lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time, he looked small, cornered. I leaned back in my chair, arms loose, not saying a word. There was no need. Everything I had wanted to expose now sat under the light for everyone to see. It wasn't just about the $9,800 anymore. It was about truth dragging itself into the open, about masks tearing at the seams. The air at the dinner table fractured into pieces. It wasn't loud. No one screamed right away. The silence was worse. It was the kind that gnaws, the kind that makes everyone aware of their own heartbeat. My mother's hands trembled against her napkin. My father sat motionless, staring at my brother with a look sharp enough to cut glass. My brother tried to speak, but nothing came out. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, like a fish gasping for air in a tank that had just been drained. He started, voice thin, brittle. This isn't what it looks like. Thomas didn't flinch. His job was done. He had delivered the truth like a hammer striking the nail, and now he stood watching the fallout, calm as a man who had seen this kind of collapse before. My father's fist slammed against the table, silverware rattling, a plate shifting dangerously close to the edge. "Don't you dare lie to me," my father said, his voice low but weighted with fury. "The evidence is sitting right in front of us." My mother's voice cut through, shaking but desperate. "There has to be some explanation, some misunderstanding." "Maybe." "There's no misunderstanding," Thomas interrupted, his tone clipped. "The handwriting was analyzed against multiple samples. The conclusion isn't vague. It's absolute." The words fell like stones. There was no refuge left, no corner to crawl into where excuses could survive. My brother's face drained further, sweat beginning to bead along his forehead. His eyes darted to me, searching for an ally, but I gave him nothing. He swallowed, then forced words out in a rush. I was going to fix it before anyone noticed. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. His voice cracked. I needed help. Help. My father's voice rose, cracking through the room like a whip. "You stole your brother's name. You forged his signature. You put nearly $10,000 of debt on his record, and you called it help." The accusation clung to the air. My sister shifted uncomfortably, torn between fear and disbelief, her wide eyes bouncing between the two of them. My brother's hands curled into fists. "You don't understand. None of you ever do. I didn't have a choice." "You had every choice," I said, finally breaking my silence. My voice was steady, almost quiet, but it carried. "You didn't ask. You didn't come to me. You just signed my name and hoped no one would notice." He turned toward me, anger flashing now, desperation feeding it. "Because you wouldn't have said yes. You never say yes. You've always looked down on me, like I can't handle anything on my own. You wanted the easy way out." I cut in. The tension snapped then. My father shoved back his chair, the legs scraping harshly against the wood floor. He stood tall, glaring down at his son like a judge about to hand down a sentence. "You've embarrassed this family," he said coldly. "Worse, you've betrayed it. Do you understand what that means?" My brother's jaw tightened, his eyes burning, but his voice wavered when he finally answered. "I didn't think it would go this far." Thomas closed the folder, his role finished, but he didn't leave. He stayed rooted in the room, a silent witness to the wreckage. Maybe he wanted to make sure I wasn't left carrying the burden alone. Or maybe he simply knew walking out would mean abandoning a storm that still had lightning to throw. My mother finally broke, tears streaking her face as she leaned toward my brother. "Why? Why would you do this to your own blood?" He couldn't answer. He stared at the table instead, shoulders slumped, his confidence stripped away. But then, like someone had flipped a switch, his voice hardened. "Because no one here ever believes in me. Not you, not Dad, not him." He pointed at me with a trembling finger. "All my life, I've been the one expected to fail. So I did what I had to do to get ahead." My father shook his head, disgust etched into his features. "Ahead? You've buried yourself. And worse, you tried to bury your brother with you." The words hit like a final judgment, but my brother wasn't ready to surrender. His eyes flicked to me again, sharp and accusing now. "You wanted this," he hissed. "Don't think I don't see it. You didn't come forward right away because you wanted me exposed. You set me up. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him, voice calm but pointed. I didn't forge my own signature. You did that all on your own. The fight drained out of him then, his body sagging in his chair. The room grew still again, every breath loud, every heartbeat heavy. My sister whispered, almost to herself, I can't believe this. My mother pushed her chair back, rising unsteadily to her feet. She pressed her hands against the edge of the table, her face pale. This family can't survive lies like this, she whispered. My father didn't comfort her. He remained where he was, staring at his son with a look that could have frozen fire. You'll make this right, he said firmly. Tomorrow morning you'll go to the bank. You'll sign whatever papers are necessary. You'll fix what you broke. And if I don't, my brother shot back, defiance sparking one last time. Then you're no son of mine. The sentence landed like a slap, sharp and final. My brother flinched, then looked away, unable to hold his father's gaze. My mother gasped softly, but even she didn't argue. The truth had left no ground to defend him. Thomas finally stepped forward, setting the closed folder on the table. I'll have the paperwork ready by morning, he said. His eyes shifted toward me for the first time since he'd entered. This won't touch your record once it's corrected. I nodded once, silent. He gave a final glance at my father, then at my brother, before leaving the house as quietly as he had entered. The sound of the front door closing echoed like a punctuation mark. We sat there in the aftermath, the dinner forgotten, the food untouched. The smell of it lingered, but it only made the air heavier. My sister excused herself quietly, slipping out of the room. My mother sank back into her chair, her face buried in her hands. My father remained standing, arms crossed, staring at the son who had just fractured the family with a single reckless act. My brother leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, as if bracing for whatever came next. His chest rose and fell unevenly, his composure gone. For the first time, he looked like he didn't know what came after. The night after the confrontation stretched longer than it should have. Nobody spoke much. My mother wept quietly in the living room. My father sat rigid in his armchair, and my brother vanished upstairs, his door slamming like a warning. I stayed awake, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I knew this wasn't finished. One evening wasn't enough to erase a betrayal that deep. Morning came fast. The house carried no warmth. My father's footsteps echoed down the hallway as he prepared to drag my brother to the bank. The unspoken rule of our family had always been to keep problems inside, but this one had already spilled beyond our walls. My father's reputation mattered, and he wasn't about to let his son's recklessness stain it. When my brother finally emerged, his eyes were bloodshot, his shoulders slumped. He looked like someone who had aged years overnight. My father didn't waste words. "Get in the car," he said, voice flat. My brother obeyed. I didn't go with them. I didn't need to. I already knew the papers would be signed, the loan corrected, the debt taken from my name. Thomas would make sure of it. What mattered now wasn't the paperwork. It was the fracture left behind. Hours later, they returned. My father walked in first, expression carved from stone. My brother trailed behind, hollow-eyed. My mother rushed toward them, searching for some sign of relief. My father gave a curt nod. It's handled. His name's off the record. The debt's his now. My mother let out a shaky breath, but the tension didn't lift. If anything, it grew heavier. My father turned to my brother. You'll pay it off yourself. No shortcuts, no more lies. And don't expect this family to bail you out again. My brother said nothing. He dropped onto the couch, staring at the floor, as if the weight of the words pressed him down. My sister hovered in the doorway, silent, eyes flicking nervously between everyone. I should have felt relief, maybe even triumph. But instead, what settled inside me was colder. Because this wasn't just about a loan. It was about trust, and trust doesn't get repaired by signatures on a page. The next days blurred into one another, each meal more strained than the last. My father barely acknowledged my brother. My mother tried to bridge the silence, but her attempts collapsed into thin air. My sister avoided the table entirely when she could, eating upstairs to escape the tension. My brother, once cocky and loud, grew quiet. He avoided me, avoided my father, even avoided my mother's worried eyes. The debt followed him like a shadow. Calls started coming, reminders of payments, deadlines. The reality, he couldn't outrun. One evening a week later, he finally snapped. He stormed into the kitchen, voice sharp. "Are you happy now?" he shouted at me. "You got what you wanted. Everyone looks at me like I'm the enemy. You set me up for this." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You did it to yourself. "You could have stopped it," he said bitterly. "You could have covered for me. You could have protected me." I stared at him, unflinching. "And what would that have taught you? That you can betray me, steal from me, and I'll clean it up? No, you made your choice. Now you live with it." He glared at me, shaking his head like he couldn't decide whether to punch me or collapse. My father's voice cut in before either could happen. "Enough. Don't blame him for your mistakes. You put us all here." My brother's fury cracked then. He looked at our father, then at me, then at the rest of the house, and I saw it the moment he realized he'd lost everything. His family's trust, his father's respect, his brother's forgiveness. Even my mother, who had once defended him no matter what, couldn't shield him now. He left the kitchen without another word, the slam of his door upstairs echoing through the walls. From that point on, he was more a ghost than a son. He came and went at odd hours, barely speaking. The debt consumed him, and with it, any shred of pride he had left. My father kept his distance. My mother cried often, but even she stopped trying to mend what couldn't be repaired. The final crack came a month later. My brother announced he was moving out. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't ask for help. He packed his bags in silence, avoiding all of us. My mother begged him to reconsider, tears spilling as she tried to hold on. "Don't do this. We can figure out together." He shook his head. "There's nothing left here for me." My father stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his face unreadable. "If you walk out, don't come back expecting sympathy." My brother met his eyes, a flicker of something, anger, regret, defiance, passing between them. Then he turned and left, dragging his suitcase behind him. The sound of the door closing this time wasn't just noise. It was finality. After he was gone, the house felt different, lighter in some ways, but also emptier. My mother mourned not just his absence, but the idea of the son she thought she had. My sister retreated further into herself, shaken by how quickly family could fracture. My father focused on his work, burying himself in it like he could outrun the disappointment. And me, I carried the silence. I hadn't spoken the final word, but I had set everything in motion. I had chosen not to protect him, not to soften the blow. I had let the truth stand on its own, and in doing so, I had torn away whatever bond remained between us. Yet I didn't regret it, because lies rot in the dark, and this one had been festering too long. Exposing it meant destruction, yes, but it also meant freedom. I no longer had to live under the weight of his shadow, his carelessness dragging me down. In the end, the $9,800 was never really about money. It was about a line crossed that could never be redrawn. The family remained, changed but intact. My father colder, my mother quieter, my sister wary. My brother gone, carrying his choices with him. And me, still here, watching the pieces fall exactly where they were always meant to.